Hey everybody, Steve from the Pinball Room. Thank you so much again for coming back. I know it's been a little while. I apologize for the tardiness and get this other video out. It's been a rough last month. There's been a lot going on. Some trips, some injuries to my neck, different things happening, like whatever. All excuses, but it's, yeah. I've been working a lot on the artwork, so that's what I want to talk to you guys about here today. Hopefully we don't have too much of an echo here in this room. The acoustic might be a little bit off. I apologize if it is. Yeah, I want to talk about the artwork. So this is actually a topic that I thought, or a section I thought I was just going to kind of breeze through. I've done artwork before, large format printing on adhesive vinyl, things like that for some different arcade machines that I've done in the past. Built up custom arcade machines like 15 years ago, so I figured out I know how to do this. I work with design software and stuff for my day job, and the Playfield ended up being way more frustrating for me and problematic than I thought. The side decals, the Translite, everything else, I feel it turned out good. We're going to test it here in a minute. That's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go through. I want to give you some of the tips and tricks and things I learned about making the Playfield art that, again, if you haven't done this before, you might run into the same problem. So hopefully you can learn from my frustration and the things I figured out to make it maybe a little bit easier for you. And then we're going to go through and I'll show you a little bit of time lapse. We're actually going to get the cabinet graphics on the cabinet and see what we can do. We're way behind schedule though. I really don't see how Pinball Expo is going to happen. My wife and I were talking. I think we'll probably just go without my machine. It's not in a state where it's playable like I want it to be. It's really disappointing, very frustrating, and I was really hoping to be out there with all you guys. I'm not sure. I might still make it out there, but if so, I don't think my machine's going to be there. Anyway, we'll find out. That's making me sad. We're going to find out. Anyway, one thing at a time. So, yeah, before we get going too much further, I'm overdue. I need to give a big shout out to our Patreon supporters on my channel. Really appreciate it, guys. We've got 3 that have come up over the last couple months, and you guys, it's awesome. It just means the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. So I want to give a big shout out to Mark at Plate from out in China is your address. So wow. Hopefully Patreon will get your stickers sent out to you over there. I think you're about due for your sticker to get sent out to you after 3 months. You guys start getting a little bit of swag. Another big thank you to B-Dash, or also Mark, I believe is your name, from B-Dash. I'm going to throw those up here on the screen. Super jackpot level, thank you so much, really appreciate it. I think you're coming up on almost 3 months also, so you should be getting a t-shirt here pretty soon, so thank you so much for your support, guys. It means the world. And then last but not least to Stefan from out in Canada. So thank you so much at the skill shot level, really appreciate it, guys. It makes the extra artwork printing I've had to do that much more affordable, so I really appreciate your contributions so we keep this moving forward. I really am trying to get better and better and get my videos back to like a weekly or semi-weekly basis. I know it's been crazy. It's been rough. I hurt my neck, got a herniated disc down in my C7 that I've been dealing with. I'm finally starting to kind of come out of that. So if you see me not with the best posture, you'll know why. Anyway, but enough of that. Let's jump right into it. So when you're doing your artwork for your pinball machine, there's a handful of things you need to worry about, right? Obviously, we've got digital artwork we've been talking about already for the actual display, right, for your screen. So we've already kind of gone through and talked about that. We want to talk about more of that today. Today, we really want to talk more about the print artwork. So we've got a Translite that we've got to print out. And when you go through into your Translite, obviously you need to figure out your dimensions. I had a good comment, a couple of questions in the video. Some people are wondering what I was using for the speaker grill, because you know I'm using a Williams cabinet, which I am. I'm using an old Williams cabinet. This is a donated Monster Bash that even before that was a Medieval Madness. At least there's 2 layers of graphics. Anyway, you saw it from one of the very first videos. But it's a Williams machine. And for the speaker panel and everything else, I really like what Stern has for their spike cabinet. And I saw it on Pinball Live. I'm like, maybe I'll splurge on that. I think it's like $100 or something like that. Maybe 150, I forget. It's on my bill of materials. Everyone, remember, I've been getting lots of questions. Everything that I bought for my pinball machine is on my Google Sheet spreadsheet that has links out. A couple of them now, maybe a couple years old. There might be a couple links that maybe don't work. Let me know. I went through and checked a few weeks ago, and I think everything was accurate. I updated a couple of links. But anyway, everything I buy for my machine is in there. I've got a running list. We're up to almost $5,000 investment in this. Technically, it's a couple grand more than that, probably on all the extra wood. And on some of the things, I put down like how many of those parts were needed, like coils and things like that. You know, different Playfield mechs for my machine. So I've got like 7 drop targets, right? Well, I think I've actually bought like 10 or 12. I bought a few extras, and so my actual expense has been greater than what's shown there on the Google Sheet. Anyway, so you can find this speaker panel and everything else I've got in there. Okay, so what I did, I took the speaker panel for the Stern Spike 2 system, and I threw it in here. I've got my 3D printed speaker mounts that go behind that also hold the screen in place. It's a believe it's a 15-inch display. Again, this was talked about in an earlier video. LCD panel with HDMI controller that's kind of glued on here. That kind of holds everything in place. I also got the little piece of clear acrylic that Pinball Life sells. It kind of goes in front of your screen to protect that because it's already fit and has a cutout for the lock and everything, so it just goes right in, as opposed to cutting my own piece of acrylic. It was like 10 bucks, I think. And then, since this is a little bit narrower than a Williams back box, I went through, and I think I explained this in an earlier video when I was prepping the cabinet and doing the paint, but maybe not. Someone just asked about it. So I got different, some shims, basically a couple of pieces of wood that I threw in here to kind of shim it up, that kind of closed the gap on the sides, because the stern back box is a little bit narrower, okay? So I shimmed that up to help close the gap here, and then what that leaves me with is a Translite size that's almost identical to a Stern Spike 2 Translite also, which is, I just looked up for somebody else, 26. Do I have my measurement here, my measuring tape? Hold on. I want to say it's 26 inches by about 16 and a half tall. Let's see here. It is upside down, but yeah, we are, yeah, it's right at like 26 inches wide for a Stern Spike 2. And then the height, now this is where things were a little bit different, and I realized I think I'm going to need to reprint my Translite just a little bit. On my Translite, I've got the artwork, I've got Led Zeppelin, and then I've got my little Pinball Room logo kind of in the corner, because, you know, why not? And I spaced it in and down about 3/4 of an inch, you know, in from the left and down from the top. And the Williams Backbox cabinet, it's got a much thicker piece of wood here. It kind of has like a little bit of an angle, and then it comes across, but it's pretty thick. The slot for the back glass up here is kind of deep. It's a good solid inch, maybe even 1.25 inches. I think it's about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.8 inches. Anyway, this is a deeper channel than on a Stern Spike 2. So what I took like my Foo Fighters back glass out, and I put it in here, and it slides up in further. Okay, this piece of wood comes down a little bit deeper. So even though we're doing like a 26 by 16 and a half Translite, you know, a good 3/4, well, a good inch of that is going to get covered by this piece of wood for me, where in a Stern cabinet it doesn't. It's slimmer. Anyway, all that's to say is the back glass, if you do something similar to mine, where you have like one of those Williams cabinets, or several of you have told me that you've been going out and buying the pre-cut, flat-packed Virtua Pin cabinet they have for Williams, in case you want to do like a virtual pinball machine. Still a great place to buy a cabinet. It's like 350 bucks, shipped out to you. It's all pre-cut. You just have to assemble it. And so they're the same dimensions as a Williams, means it's a little bit wider than a Spike. So you'll want to do a similar thing, probably put in a couple of shims, a couple of pieces of wood to kind of shim up that gap. Then you can use the same bracket here. This is a separate purchase, I believe, from Pinball Life. The little bracket that this thing, you know, locks into. And it also has the little lip here that holds your Translite in place. Anyway, that was another 15-20 bucks, I think. And then, anyway, you're just going to be, you'll need to adjust your artwork to know you're going to have like a little bit thicker border on top. Okay, very wordy. But when you do your Translite, I guess at the end of the day, no matter what your cabinet is, just make sure, obviously, you know, you've taken the time to kind of measure it out and that it's going to fit, and you know exactly how much of a gap you have here and there. Anyway, all right, so the last thing about a Translite, there's lots of different ways you do Translite. The most fancy, beautiful Translites are like a mirrored back glass, right, where it's like printed, I believe, I'm not an expert, I believe I got to look it up, I believe it's like printed, like reverse printed like on the glass, and so it's like part of it, and they just look like amazing. I think there's kind of a shiny backing behind it, so it just looks really bright. Anyways, mirror back glasses, like all the rage what they talked about. I don't know exactly how to make one of those. I haven't really looked it up. I'm sure other people out there on YouTube can tell you how to do that. I'm doing, at the print shop, you can get lots of things. It's this material that's kind of semi-opaque. You can print on it, and it allows the light to come through just great. And so I use those for like the marquees from my arcade machines. They turned out fabulous. I'm using the same type of thing for Translites. I've gone through and I found artwork for other machines, like when I don't actually have the actual Translite, and I put them inside frames down in my game room. You can print those off. The same thing as this, I forget what they call it, but it's like a backlit sign, I think is what most like print shops will call it. If you go to like a FedEx Kinko's or like an Alpha Graphics or whatever little logo print shop you have, just ask them, say, hey, I want to go through and you know, get something printed. I'm going to have light, LED lights behind, it's going to shine through to light it up. So it really looks, you know, nice and bright. And tell them like a marquee for arcade machine, or like a backlit sign that some stores have. Sometimes they'll put them like in windows and the sun shines through, it really makes them glow. It's that same material. It's not very expensive. I think my Translite cost me like 20 bucks to get printed, 15, 20 bucks. Anyway, so you can go through and do that. And then If you want to use the glass, obviously you can cut glass. That's kind of harder, more expensive. I'm just taking some acrylic. I actually have some PETG, but just some like plexiglass, right? You cut it to the right size, and then I just am sandwiching that between two pieces of like 1/16 acrylic, and that comes out to be, you know, the right width or the right thickness to where then it'll go in here just fine. Pinball Life also has the little pieces of black plastic that kind of, you know, go around Translite to kind of help hold it all in place. I'm just using that, putting those around the two pieces of acrylic, keeps it nice and tight, and slides up in, gives it that kind of that black edge to it, right, that you're used to seeing in pinball machines. So that's how we're doing the Translite, and I will go through and hopefully by the end of this video we'll come back around and I'll show you that. Won't have to talk through it all again, but I'll show you how I'm doing that. One of the primary issues I ran into when printing was the Playfield. The cabinet graphics turned out fine. Like, you want to make sure you measure your cabinet, right? And go inside Inkscape or Photoshop or Illustrator, whatever you're using, and get your dimensions correct. Most printers are going to want you to have a path, like a vector path or a line. I think it's a line tool in Illustrator. I'm more of a Photoshop guy. Where you're able to basically kind of draw the outline of the shape of where you want them to cut, and their little machine will follow that path, that little vector line, and it knows exactly where to cut it and trim it. So if you have something that's not like a perfect square, like my back box is wider at the top than it is at the bottom. Obviously the side of the cabinet's taller in the back, right? So you'll need to cut it to the right size. So you'll get those dimensions, and you're gonna want your actual image to be just a little bit bigger. So you have bleed that goes kind of beyond that. So when they cut it, you make sure that if their cut is off by a millimeter or two, you won't get like this tiny little stripe of white on wet edge that will kind of look funky, you know. Anyway, so keep that in mind. Figure out all your measurements. Get your image file all sized up, scaled up, 300 DPI, okay, is the resolution you're gonna want. It's print quality, so it won't look all fuzzy. I'm sure most of you know that. Anyway, and then just make sure you have your actual image file is a little beyond those dimensions, and then you have a line drawn, a vector line that follows those dimensions, the precise dimensions, so we have a little bit of bleed, and you'll avoid all that, okay? And then it's a self-adhesive vinyl. If you watched my the High-Speed 2 Getaway restoration I did with my son, not necessarily a full restoration, but it was pretty good. We did a Playfield swap, and we put on new graphics and everything for that. And then you can put it on its side and lay it out. And again, I'll show you how we do that here with this cabinet here later on in the video. So, and then you do the same with the coin door, right? You'll need to measure that out. You also need to go through and kind of measure out like where the cuts are gonna be. For me, I'm pretty handy with an X-Acto knife, so I just do like the outer dimensions and have them do it, and I lay it down. I'm gonna take off the coin door, take off the shooter rod, the start button, and we'll apply it, and then I'll just cut that, because there's gonna be enough overlap. This will go out around the hole, this goes around the hole, etc. Even if your cut with your X-Acto knife isn't perfectly circular, perfectly smooth, all this is gonna cover up any sort of little jagged edge you have, so you can kind of get away with that. It doesn't have to be like perfectly machined, laser cut, you know, if you don't want it to be. If you can, take the time to do it, like why not? It'll make it even easier to apply, but you don't necessarily have to. All right, that's kind of the printed graphics, right? The side cabinets, the side of the back box, the Translite, the coin door, those are the main things. And then the Playfield. I've never done a Playfield before. So Playfield was thinking, okay, I've got everything inside Fusion. Let me show you here. I've got everything here inside Fusion 360. And I'm like, okay, this is accurate to what I've been cutting out of with the CNC machine, right? So I just need to go through and export out a 2D version of this that I can import into like Photoshop or Inkscape, and then, you know, paint on top of, apply my graphics on top of. So I did that. I went up to File and Export, and I chose the DXF. I also tried like a DWG and got those imported in and played around with them. And I took it to the printer on my test whitewood here, and we did a test print on the UV print because it wasn't very expensive. They went through to do it, and they called me up. They said, Steve, this isn't gonna work. Things aren't really lining up. And he said, luckily our guy kind of caught it. They looked at the file, they trusted me. They started to do like one little pass of the white underlayer, and they noticed around these inserts over here, if I can show them to you here, you know, the rollover target, all that it was off by like a good like 6 or 7 millimeters. Noticeably off. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, thank you. Don't print any further. Let me double check my file. Let's see what's going on. And so I went back, picked up the wood, got my handy dandy tape measure and even my calipers, and I started going through and measuring. Okay, Photoshop says, you know, it's 19 millimeters from the edge. In reality, this thing is, oh, it's like 16 from the edge. Oh, okay. And it took me a while to realize, like, why is this so far off? And then I realized it. I forgot that when I go to my makerspace, I'm using the CNC machine there, if you remember, I've talked about it's not big enough for a full playfield. And so I have to do it in 2 passes. I line up the bottom left corner and I cut about half the playfield, and then because it can't go the full length, so then I have to take it off, remove everything, right, switch the wood around, put it back down, rehome the router bit, anyway, and zero it back out, and cut again. And that's allowed for a couple millimeters, maybe of margin of error over here, but I flip it out another couple of millimeters and things are off. Things are not matching up exactly to the export I had. The other issue I had was the export came out and the lines, I'd open up in like Illustrator and Photoshop, and the lines, the cut lines were really thick. And I was like, okay, am I not doing like the right scale, the right import settings? I was struggling with that for a little while. Just as last week, I finally, Googled around a little bit more. I found a different support article for Fusion 360. And apparently there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can export DXF files. And the way I was doing it was not really the recommended way if you're trying to have something that is very one-to-one accurate and everything. So let me show you the way I found now that has been way more accurate, way better, and I'm ready to go through and do another test print, and I feel much more confident it's going to actually line up correctly. And that is, if you go inside Fusion 360, up here under Design, you want to go down to Drawing, and then go do a Drawing from Design. This will take a minute. It's going to come here now, ask, okay, what do you want? Visible contents only. Yes, we're going to create new from scratch. The standard. The sheet size. You need to make sure you pick a sheet size, the A0, that's big enough to handle the whole entire playfield. We know our playfield is about 1,143 millimeters long by 500 wide, so we're going to do an A0, which is 1189 by 841. And then you hit OK. It's going to think for a little while. This is going to go through and create a drawing. I'm not sure exactly the term, like almost kind of like a blueprint drawing for it, right? That's going to match specifically what you have inside your file. And you're also now going to have some options to go through and double check or to set exactly what scale you want it brought in at. The default is like a 1:5, so we're going to go over here and change this to a 1:1. Not 1:12, 1:1, okay? Orientation, we're going to do it from the front. You can kind of pick a side, put style, visible edges, visible and hidden, shaded. I'm just going to stick with just visible edges, nothing more. We want just a very basic like black and white from the top down, okay? And then here it is, boom, and we got to bring it in. We'll click once to bring it in, okay? And then we're going to go over here to rotate, and we're going to pick a corner, and we're going to begin to rotate this once I actually pick it. Come on, select objects. You can go. Why is it not letting me rotate now? Unselected, and now rotate, you can go. All right. Okay, you can see it over there. I actually kind of want it in this way. 90 degrees, okay? And then this whole thing, we need to move, transform, and now we'll drag it down here in the space and it will fit nice, like that. Come on. Once you get it where you want it, you gotta click, once you drop it, you can hit OK. And then we can get rid of this extra stuff down here in the corner. We don't really need like this key down here. We're not sending anybody to go through and do stuff, but you can get rid of all of this so it doesn't show up inside your editor. Get rid of kind of these guides around the edges to where all you have are just your actual cut lines, okay? And then you can go through up here and you export it as a PDF, okay? All sheets, current sheet, we just have the one anyway. And keep the line weights in there. And you export that out and you will get a very clean, very crisp drawing of all your cut lines. And then when you bring this into Photoshop or Inkscape or Illustrator, and I compare that and I measured things were lining up so much better. Now for me, it was still not perfect because again, I had this issue where I'm flipping my playfield around halfway through, right? So I had to go through and go back and kind of remind myself, I'm not gonna say that, I've already got one. I had to go back through and remind myself, okay, when I'm going through and doing this in the CNC, give this a second to catch up, here under manufacture, and I've got 2 different tool paths here. Okay, so I've got lower half and upper half. And if I look here at upper half, right, you can see here, all the ones that are shaded, the ones that are being cut in that second pass. So I needed to kind of like basically take that PDF line drawing and draw a line here through the ones that are white versus the ones that are blue and kind of select the bottom half and separate that out as a separate layer. I was doing this inside Photoshop. So then I could align the top half, make sure to align to the actual measurements of the actual field I cut, right? So I was going through and comparing with my caliper. Okay, how far in exactly is this insert from the edge, and how far, you know, from the bottom edge is it? So I did that to align the top half and the bottom half because there's a little bit of inconsistency. Because otherwise, I'd line it from the top left corner and the whole top half was good, then I'd get down here at the bottom half and things would be off a little bit. Again, it's because they were cut in 2 separate passes, and the CNC I have just is not that precisely accurate every time you home it right and get it going. So once I did that, I got the top half to align, everything was aligning nice, the bottom half, everything was aligning very nice. You just got to make sure when you bring it into Photoshop or Inkscape, you know that the scale of your image matches exactly what you have your print at, right? So basically I had that PDF, it still has a lot of white around it. I selected just the edges of the playfield and I cropped it down to that, and I made sure that was my 1143 millimeters by 513.5, and then things were lining up really good. Now, after the very first time I took it to the print shop and tried to have them just kind of do UV print and realized things were off, I was like, okay, that was like $100. I actually found a shop that cost me about $80 just for the playfield. So that's a little more expensive. I don't want to do a whole bunch of like $80 test prints. I want to make sure I get it right. So I went through and I went to FedEx Kinko's, which was the next best thing I could find, and did a 24-inch by 36-inch large poster print. That cost me about $35 online, 37 I think with tax and all that. But allowed me to go through and kind of print out just a sample one here, and I lay it down on top of the playfield. And you can either do this, like put it up to a window so you can see the light shining through and make sure that where the inserts are on the paper, the white part is actually where the light's shining through. I'd hurt my C5 or my C7 vertebra, my disc, and so it's kind of hard for me to hold everything up. So I just took one of the lights that I use for recording my videos, this little guy here, and I took it off the tripod and I just put it down here inside my cabinet, turned it on so it's shining up from below, and then put this over it. And then this allows me to see, I'm not sure how well you can see that on the video. Get you a little bit closer. There you go. This allows me to kind of see exactly, right, where, here it is without the light. Okay. So right there I can't really tell where things are at. But then as soon as I turn it on, now you can see it coming through and you can tell whether things are lining up or not. Again, I'm not positive just how well that's coming through on the camera. But anyway, it allows me to go through and look and see, okay, are things really lining up? And my last one lined up pretty good, but you can see over here, I'm a little bit off. Okay, that scale was a little bit off. And this is my final one before I kind of found the right way to do it in Fusion. So, moment of truth. We're gonna take that one and put that over there. I just picked up this morning the latest print that has the latest artwork using the correct export. Now, obviously, you know, our playfield is more than 36 inches wide, right? But I wanted to be able to go through and just, you know, kind of get most of it printed here. So yeah, I don't have the very top of the playfield, but that's kind of behind the upper ball guide anyway, or the very, very bottom. But I've got all the way down here to like to the shoot again or rock again insert, which is what this one is. Line that up. Okay, that's lined up really well. These are lined up really well. How's the upper side over here? We're just maybe just a little bit off on these ones though. All right, everything's lined up great other than these few through here. I can tell we're just a little bit off. They're kind of within reason, but the other ones are all so perfect. I'm gonna go through inside Photoshop now. These are all just a little bit down and to the left, and almost all of these bottom ones had to raise up and to the right. So I wonder if maybe I forgot to do these, or I saved these. These are all a little low and to the left. They all need to be just up and over to the right, just a couple of millimeters. I think when I was doing the lower half and adjusting, somehow I didn't quite adjust these. So, but that's why we did another test print, right, before we wasted actually doing it on the playfield. So anyway, some version of this, I guess is what it comes down to. I highly recommend you come up with some method to do, whether you do it in full color, black and white, whatever is cheap and easy and accessible for you, right, at some print house. But I highly recommend you go through and do some sort of a test print, just to double, triple check that the artwork you're gonna put down really, truly does line up with your inserts, okay? Now, one of the things you always see inserts that have kind of this thick border around them, right? Like a darker line, a black or something else like that. Because even the professionals know that when you print, things might be off. You may have them lined up perfectly. Every time the wood gets put down, the print head might be off by a millimeter or two. And so if you have an exact crisp line, like 1 millimeter, 1 pixel thick, that goes right around the outside of your insert, and then you're off just a half millimeter or so, the human eye is going to kind of see that, oh, it's not exactly really where the light's coming through, it's a little bit off. And so you make everything that's white on this is where it's not going to be painted, right? So it could be clear and have the light come through. You want to make sure that area is just a little bit smaller by about 1.5 millimeters, I think, on each dimension by X, Y, or from left to right and top to bottom. Shrink it in just a little bit with a thicker border. That way, if things do get shifted just a tiny bit, no one will really see that because your circle will still, be within the insert. So the insert's going to be, like this big insert here is 31 millimeters in diameter. So my circle inside here, I believe, is about 29. Let me double check where I end up doing mine. For the big ones, I have them at, actually, I have mine a little bit smaller. I have mine at 26. So I might have a little bit thicker borders than what you need. But that way, even if I'm off by 1 millimeter or 2 here and there, the light's still going to come through the right place. Like these ones that are off just a tiny bit, they really would still work because they're still covering the edge of the insert, but I can tell just a little bit, it's going to be a little bit off, so I want to fix that. I haven't printed yet, I can, so I'm going to go through and fix it. All right, so that's really kind of the most important thing, and it's taken me until I figured out this last way to do the correct line drawing inside Fusion. I wasted a couple weeks testing things, trying back and forth, just kind of measuring by hand, adjusting, and it just was never quite really lining up just right. I couldn't figure out exactly why. But anyway, using that other DXF drawing tool inside Fusion to then export out, things are looking good. Things are looking much better now. So, all right. So from that, I'm going to go through. I'm going to pause. I'm going to tweak these so they're set. I'm going to get another test print off to Kinko's so I can double check that everything is perfect. So that hopefully today is Saturday. So by Monday, I can drop this off back to the print shop and get the actual whitewood playfield. I went through and I made another playfield. I cut out and did a whole nother playfield just because the last one that I'd done when I was playing around with putting in the different small stand-up targets and cutting things, it just was looking ugly. I couldn't handle it. So I did a whole nother playfield that also took me some more time. This is another final playfield with another set of inserts. Yeah, that when we put it back together, we'll not have those unsightly holes and the white fill I did, kind of like the Bondo stuff. Anyway, all that should be a lot cleaner, a lot better for us. So this will be a better test playfield with the, and we'll have a version of the graphics there to look at also. So this is what we came up with for the graphics. Something colorful and different. Big old staircase heading up to Heaven's Gate for like the whole Stairway to Heaven thing. So not bad, something different. All right, so yeah, so I'm gonna go through and adjust those so that is good to go. And then we're gonna come back and we're gonna take apart the cabinet. We're gonna remove the back box from the cabinet and get the wheel and get the legs off and all that so we can apply the outer cabinet artwork. There's the receipt. So we can apply these and get them on the cabinet so the cabinet will look awesome. so here we go. We've got a side cabinet artwork all set. We're good, and then we just got to get the Translite. And I was going to go through and do the Translite as part of the video also, and I totally forgot that I haven't cut out my pieces of acrylic yet. So we're going to come back to that one. But yeah, sneak peek. Okay, so yeah, normally I would have a partner helping me apply these graphics. It's a lot easier. My wife was out running errands though, so she wasn't around, and I just said, screw, I'm just gonna do it. My son-in-law actually helped me, but I was like halfway done. I'm like, no, I'll do it. I'm glad you got to really see me do this side. I did that side first, and I had to like get it and like take it all the way back off and put it back on. Luckily, it was still sticky enough, so it turned out good also. But anyways, now I can see why so many of you go through and do your artwork as one of your earlier steps, because man, that's really encouraging, gorgeous to look at artwork, and just it makes it feel so much more like a real pinball machine than just this black wood. Anyways, all right, so yeah, that's kind of the quick time lapse. There is more I could go into detail. Let me know if you guys want me to, as far as like how exactly I'm creating my Playfield artwork and the process of going through and like, you know, creating the outlines for each one of the inserts and then the text. But I mean, there's nothing really special to pinball artwork versus other artwork, right? Other than making sure you definitely have a good line drawing to go off of for all your cut lines, right? That way you can make sure you line everything up. And then really it's just a matter of kind of whatever style you want, right? Everyone I've talked to said, oh, make sure you do an outline on your inserts, because there is going to be some amount of imperfection when you print it. And so if you just have like a sharp transition from artwork straight to the clear of the insert, things are gonna be off just a little bit. So if you have that fat border that kind of goes across that line, right? Imagine this is your insert, this is your Playfield, and so you got this edge right here. If you draw your artwork right along this edge, and then you're off just a hair, you're gonna see that, right? So if right along that seam, if I had a third hand, right along that seam here is where you want to do kind of a broad stroke that kind of overlaps a little bit on both sides. And that way if things shift up or down a little bit, you've got that, you've got a little bit of wiggle room, right? I guess is the word for it I'm looking for, right? You've got a little bit of leeway there to kind of compensate for that. And then beyond that, like how thick you want to do that. I mean, go look at some pinball machines near you. I was like looking at my Foo Fighters and my Godzilla and Jurassic Park and like seeing, okay, Jurassic Park does a black, then like kind of like yellow outline. This one just has a single outline. Lots of different ways you can do it. Whatever you feel is going to work best with your artwork and looks good to you. It's really all that matters, right? And then find a font. I use the same Led Zeppelin font that I found online. It was gorgeous, so I use that for the text on my inserts. Looks really sharp. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it's all coming together, and it makes it just, this is very reinvigorating. This is a good day. This is exactly what I needed, to see this gorgeous artwork in person, have it come out looking good. There's no crazy creases. I was able to smooth it all out, and like, reigniting that fire, because I was getting frustrated with how many times I'm on like my 4th test print of my Playfield artwork to line it up between the top and the bottom halves of my cuts, and like, the last one's printing right now down at Kinko's. I'm gonna get hopefully here in a couple hours. I'll wait, we'll line it up, and so at the end here you'll be able to see whether or not it worked or not. Oh, I hope so. But I told my wife, she's out running errands, I'm like, well, when you come home, I'll either be so excited and so ecstatic, or I'll be in a corner in the fetal position crying like a little boy, like a little kid, because it was frustrating. But yeah, man. Now, for all of you that are real Led Zeppelin, purists, I recognize this is not authentic Led Zeppelin artwork. This was done using AI through Midjourney. I really like what it came up with. I feel it's very Led Zeppelin inspired. I took the Celebration Day album art. I think I've talked about this in a different video, right? And I use that as kind of like the seed for it, right? To get things kind of related to that, inspired by that. And so we've got similar colors going on, similar idea of like a sun with rays coming out from the center. This one is kind of derivatives, got again kind of the whole like stairway to heaven thing going up, which I really liked. The sun, it doesn't scream Led Zeppelin, I'll admit. It's not quite as grungy, it's not quite as simplistic and vectory as a lot of their album artwork was, like Mothership or any ones from the box set, right, were a different style. So I get that. A little bit of hesitation maybe to have gone that route, or to not have gone that route, right, and just use the AI, but I don't know, I liked it. I threw this up to my Patreon supporters and kind of gave them a version 1, version 2. 1 was pretty much just taking this Celebration Day album artwork and just making it fit to these dimensions. And then the other one, and this one hands down, with the hundreds of Patreon supporters now. But for the couple of dozen people here in the voting, it was very, very clear that this one just was working a little bit better, and I liked it too. And I feel like this lends itself to the Playfield better. I was really struggling to get the Playfield to really work. I was really struggling to get the Playfield to work with the Celebration Day artwork. I had a version, it kind of worked, but it was just, I don't know, it was not very vibrant. It wasn't really working with the colors of the LEDs I want to do and things like that. And anyway, I like what we came up with for the Playfield, and this very much goes along with the Playfield, so, oh well, that's the route I went. And hey, the joy of it is, this is just my own thing, right? So no one else has to like it. Hopefully some people do. My family's been really nice and said it looks great, but they kind of have to, right? Anyways, there you go. Artwork is a great milestone. You decide when it makes sense in your project, early on, in the middle, more towards the end like me, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like it came at just the right time for me because I am way more pumped than I have been over the last couple of weeks between my neck being injured and just the frustration I have with the artwork and everything else. Like, it's very good to have gotten to this point and start to see a little more beauty to the machine, right? So I'm really stoked. Excited to hear back from FedEx to go get the last test print for the Playfield, and we can drop it off on Monday if it's looking good and get it printed back in about a week or so. That'll be a whole separate video though. I'm gonna get this one up. But I guess what I was saying is there's different techniques for doing the artwork on the Playfield, right? Or different, not so much techniques. There's some different little things you just need to watch out for, right? As far as where you're gonna be putting your text. Mine ended up being much more just kind of like artistic. I'm not a great illustrator artist, so I can't really go through and do the level of detail that Christopher Franchi and Zombie Yeti, all these other ones do, where over the course of the Playfield they have kind of this nice background imagery, but there's all these little all these other kind of smaller illustrations all kind of going together to kind of tell a story, right? Like Deadpool is a great example, right? You got Deadpool down here kind of breaking the fourth wall, talking about, a world under glass and things like that, and all the little quotes and little characters. I didn't have a lot of like that just to like pull from Led Zeppelin artwork, right? That would all work in together, at least not for me at my artistic level. And so anyway, this is what we came up with, and anyway, it's gonna be good enough for me. So I like it. I'm not gonna be ashamed at all to have this in my lineup next to my other pinball machines. My hope still is for my friends that aren't really into pinball, that when they come down to my basement, they'll be able to look at it and they won't know whether this was one that I just got somewhere else or whether it's the one I made myself. So I'm hoping it can look as professional as the other ones I have down there, or darn close to it anyway, darn close. So, all right, enough of me yapping. Great day, happy day. I'm not in the corner crying. I'm enjoying life. Things are great. I'm excited to get the rest of the artwork done and get this bolted together and get some more going on the code. I would have to be done in exactly a week from today to get things ready and shipped off in time to Expo, and shipping is always kind of a fear anyway, so again, that's not going to happen. What I think is more likely what's going to happen is at Texas Pinball Festival next year, I'll go out again with my machine, and I think the first real public appearance of this is going to have to be at the local tournaments down here that we have in Salt Lake City, so I'm excited to take it down there here, hopefully by the end of the month before Halloween, and have everybody beat on it. And assuming all that goes really well, I don't need to make any other changes to my Playfield, then we'll move on to the final Playfield with a nice Baltic Birch 9-ply. But yeah, it's gonna really close to a playable prototype that looks pretty to look at also. So, all right guys, if you haven't started your own pinball machine, just get on it, do it, all right? I wanna give a shout out here at the end real fast to Max Moon. This kid that reached out to me and asked me to help kind of be a mentor for him for a school project where he's going to go through and build his own very simple kind of smaller pinball machine for school. He's got a very tight deadline and budget. But I was just honored that he bothered to ask me and thought I could help him. Like, I'll help where I can. I don't know everything. I'll help you where I can. But between myself and his dad, obviously, he's helping him a ton also, Mike. Good on you, Max. I mean, he's still just like barely in junior high and moving on, and man, I wish I was doing things like this back when I was in junior high. Think of where we could be if we all started at that age, right? We'd be the Keith Elwins of the world without even trying. All right, anyway, big shout out to Max. I'm excited to work with you on your project, see what you come up with, buddy. So good on that. I don't know I'll be able to see you guys in Expo. Hopefully I know you guys are thinking about going. We'll find out. Honestly, it's really just gonna kind of come down to what my options are with like rescheduling my flights and how much money I lose or whatnot. If I can reschedule my flights, great. We'll just go to Texas. If I'm gonna lose too much, maybe my wife and I will just fly out there and spend the weekend with you guys anyway. We'll see. She's kind of got a lot going on with her work. So anyway, all up in the air, but yeah, never been a better time to get going on building pinball, guys. There's so many tools and so many people out there to help you. So get on it. Okay, guys, we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.